Hi, I'm Phil. I'm the CEO of Engage Solutions Group, a software company based in the centre of Manchester. I'm passionate about customer and colleague engagement and how we can use the latest technology to improve it and bring it to life. We launched our employee engagement platform in 2015 and then extended it to a customer engagement last year. We have been providing solutions to a great selection of Tier 1 companies across most sectors, and we have invested heavily in the most premium approaches to guarantee adoption, the best experience, and all-round success, and that is the mobile app. So, using app technology to engage. I believe it's a critical part to digitally enable a business. What do I mean by that? So I spend much of my time in the boardroom talking with CEOs, marketing directors, sales directors, and we are seeing a large increase in demand to drive digital. Modernization, take things online, empower people more readily, especially with what's going on. But I see many companies struggling with how to do it, at speed and at scale. And I would go as far as to say that if your board doesn't have a clear digital strategy for your business, there is serious risk of being compromised, outgunned, or even failing. The best quote I've heard during lockdown from a managing director was that our board are now driving a digital strategy so fast that we are doing in 5 weeks what would have normally taken 5 years. Now that's a massive acceleration in boardroom thinking right there, and I'm sure that is happening in boardrooms up and down the land. To the marketeers in the audience, this will be familiar. It's the typical omni-channel marketing approach. Many of these channels are a tad outdated and expensive, like post and phone, or vastly overused, like email. We have apps which have come into the mainstream, but in this context, we find that apps are fairly limited and mainly transactional. Many of them are throwaway marketing apps, one-trick ponies that people will delete after a short while. This app is certainly not underpinning the customer engagement journey, building the relationship between purchases and over many, many months, if not years. I recently downloaded an app to buy some wine, and after my purchase via the app, I was then bombarded with emails. And if you're anything like me, you've probably had enough of emails now. These channels end up conflicting with each other and are not supporting my customer journey in a coherent way. But apps are obviously here to stay, and in our personal lives, we are glued to our phones. We are a mobile-first nation with already 70% of internet usage on the phone. Business really needs to capitalize on this potential, and we need to see some of the richness and slickness that we take for granted in our social media apps appearing in our business lives and within the overall context of doing business. We run our own personal and social lives on engaging apps, but then when we enter the office, it's bye-bye enjoyable Instagram and hello dry as toast email. Now, I'm not saying this is an easy transition, but the key to success is having the right strategic framework for engagement. But before we get to that, let me just recap why I believe most of today's marketing apps shouldn't be seen as engagement apps. Because they are largely transactional in nature. The app serves as a specific purpose, for example, as a shop. It's aimed to support the transaction and nothing more. Even if the app utilizes native features like push notifications, they are used in relation to that transaction. For example, notifying you of a delivery. Also, most of the content is static. We all have seen apps that are typically a reskin of an existing website. They have no real content or flow, no personalization, and no regular news feeds or updates that are specific to me. They are inactive between transactions too. As a customer, there is nothing to make you feel valued in between transactions. No value add or relationship building. It's like you don't exist in between spending money. And finally, no life cycle management. This is where we should be taking a cradle-to-grave view of the customer, being able to map out and support that whole customer life cycle. For example, the purchase of a car or the delivery of legal services. So, how do we move from this, a slightly old-school marketing approach, to this? Optimal channel customer marketing. The first thing to notice is the app is now center stage. It's the direct and primary interface between you and your customer, and the next best thing to having them in the room. A true engagement app, owning the customer relationship, embracing communications, knowledge sharing, social interaction, and transactions for the duration. The other channels are often more expensive to serve and less effective, but they're still here. We move them to the side, becoming far less used and much more complementary in nature. Now, we know many companies won't turn these other channels off completely. I mean, I occasionally still phone my bank, but ideally, and we are seeing this happening, companies should gear themselves up to fully back a digital strategy and therefore become less reliant on these older channels. It shows customers are valued, never just a name in a mail shot list to be hit monthly or quarterly. Customers must feel special. With the right information, we can achieve a very high amount of personalization, not just based on segments or demographics, but gender, location, interest, but actual micro-personalization, right down to me as an individual, all able to power system-enabled sequences and workflows that maximize engagement. The CRM system itself moves from an internally used and viewed tool to one with a mobile app front end that links your channels and can expose the CRM directly to the customer. And because you now have a simple mechanism interfacing that customer, they can populate the CRM for you, removing that pressure. And let's face it, the more information that we have, the easier we can engage and delight. Now, back to my strategic framework for engagement. How do we make this transition from a marketing app to an engagement app? Our course framework is a 6-step guide to ensuring success for your app. These are the core components that together help define and drive customer engagement. As engagement experts, we have distilled these down from a huge amount of interaction in the engagement space. Think of them as engagement essentials, and you should be looking for your app to embrace and facilitate all of these 6 points. The first one, capture. It's about capturing more leads into your funnel and converting them into customers. Once you have your app sorted and live, it's then easy to market the power of it and attract people into your branded community. And then you can start owning the relationship. Using cool tech like augmented reality is a great way of attracting interest, creating excitement, and ensuring people feel compelled to download your app and start using it straight away. It's really important that we own the entire customer life cycle. We then have the mechanism to easily own the whole customer journey, not just the specific transaction. Valuing customers between transactions, not just adding them to an email list. Also, upsell, cross-sell, and resell. This follows nicely from the last point too, because you're able to seamlessly link your extended product range or service in a way that makes it simple for the customer. You're really helping them, anticipating their future needs, at the same time they are spending more. So it's a real win-win. Make sure your business has a mechanism to drive these, especially cross-sell. It's so important and a way of looking after your customers. Referral is something most companies don't have a system for, despite a referral being the quickest and most powerful way to generate new sales. It's simple. Provide me a mechanism to recommend a friend. And a word-of-mouth scheme costs way less and are very proven to build customer bases. Self-service. These options mean empowering the customer to take charge when it's convenient for them. This isn't a new concept, but it's important that customers can do things for themselves. The power of getting this right is also in aggregation. Everything in one place, not having to visit multiple sites or systems for information. And lastly, experience. This encompasses many areas. It's the overall feeling of just being wowed, delighted, passing the rave test, so you feel compelled to tell your colleagues or friends. It's both the mix of all these points, but with the technology magic, which just makes it look awesome. And going back to that enjoyable Instagram effect, the cool new tools like AR and face recognition, 3D models and real-time chat, all creating the standout experience. So, the reality is that today's apps are only covering 1 or 2 of these letters at most, but you need all 6 for an effective engagement strategy and for an effective engagement app. But let's just look briefly at one of these as an example. Let me tell you about Robert. He is a business owner who is sadly going through a divorce. The way most professional services firms are set up means this typically would result in one piece of business, the divorce. But in an engaged world, there could be easily up to 5 pieces of business there. Simply by anticipating Robert's needs and surfacing how the firm can really help. So, as Robert is digitally onboarded via the app, which saves time and expense, he can track his interaction with the firm, and the app can automatically alert him to the requirement for an emergency will. It can then also system enable an introduction to the conveyancing team, because a house sale may become part of the process. And because of the app, the firm knows he is a business owner, and therefore there is an opportunity to offer tax advice via personalised outreach on a messaging channel, and lastly, via the personalised feed and initiatives like communities of interest, we can support Robert with some helpful and useful resources, with a potential for securing a 5th instruction. In summary, a modern and slick way that a professional services firm can share its full expertise while staying engaged for the duration. Now let's leave Robert to his divorce and talk about an altogether happier engagement. I'm really pleased to announce that we are now working with Pro Manchester, and here is a very small sneak preview of what is coming very soon. Their app will have a Facebook-style personal feed with information relevant to you, the companies you work with, and the content that interests you the most. And it will help stimulate sector-based communities of interest like tech and healthcare, helping to share knowledge and develop commercial opportunities. It will have powerful WhatsApp-style messaging platform for enhanced communication, networking, and sharing information, and a LinkedIn-style contact directory to easily find other members and enhance connectivity, networking, knowledge share, and even mentoring. It will also be full of self-service content such as booking, events, and events diaries, and helpful push notifications to remind you of events and other important information. Innovative tools like augmented reality, which allows you to place people onto your desk at home or even consume event content in a different way. I'd like to hand back to Sam, and a big thanks to Pro Manchester for hosting this event and inviting me to share my insights today.